Hi, my name is Beth and I'm the sewing pattern designer and blogger at Sew DIY. Today's video is part 4 of the Bucket Tote Sew Along. I released this pattern a few weeks ago and it comes in 2 different sizes, both a regular and a small. This pattern features large exterior pockets. The handles are made from cotton webbing and the bottom is an oval shape with pleats. So it's designed to be smaller at the bottom and bigger at the top. So it's really easy to throw everything in and then grab what you need as you go about your day. I'll have a link down in the show notes to the pattern. Last week we sewed all of the patch pockets that are in the bag, and this week we're going to be sewing the body of the bag. We'll be sewing the sides and centers together and then top stitching the handles to the body of the bag. Mostly I'll be demonstrating with this small size, but I'm also going to show you how I do the handles on the regular size, where I have them folded over and top stitched. For the regular size bag, I like to use a cotton webbing that is 1.5 inches wide. And then for the small size, I use a 1 inch wide cotton webbing. And I really like the cotton webbing because it just has a really nice soft feel in the hand, but you can also use a webbing made from a different material, or you can make your own handles using fabric. I'm actually planning a video coming up that will show you how to do that and give you all the dimensions. Let's get started. First step in assembling the body of the bag is to sew the pleats. So here I have the small bucket tote, and this is the same for the regular size. And I have marked on my fabric on the wrong side these pleat markings. So we have 2 lines and we want to fold our fabric so those lines are matching. So you just want to fold the side body in half with the right sides together, and you will line up the notches and those lines for the pleat. You can use pins if your fabric is not too thick, or you can use clips to hold it together. And then we're going to baste from the raw edge to the circle. We also need to stitch the pleats in our lining. Here I have the pleats marked on the wrong side of my fabric, and I'm going to fold it with right sides together, matching those notches. And this lining is designed differently, so you don't fold it exactly in half, and the pleats are a different size than for the exterior body. So just be aware of that. So I want to have these markings lined up, and this too will just baste along here. If you want to keep your pleats intact after sewing, you can stitch a regular length stitch. I have my machine set up for a straight stitch and a 4.0 length, a basting length, and we'll just stitch along the pleat line. And I do recommend backstitching at the beginning and end just to hold that pleat together better while we're sewing. And we will remove this basting stitch at the end of sewing the bag. And you'll also repeat for your lining piece. Now we're going to press these pleats, and you want to push the pleat down or kind of open it up so that the fold line then matches the seam line. So from the side, it looks like this. Then you can just give it a light press. You don't need to press the whole way. Just press it a little bit down there, and you repeat for the other side, and then also for your lining. Here I have my side bodies with the pleats sewn in and the center body with the pockets attached, and I'm going to start sewing them together. So I just want to point out that these pattern pieces have notches that will line up. So make sure that you have these notches marked on the wrong side of your fabric. We don't want to sew everything together in a circle yet. We're just going to sew 3 of the seams to start. So we need to have everything alternating. So we'll have a side, a center, a side, and then a center. We'll start off by sewing one side to one center and then repeating. So you want to put them right sides together and line up the little notch on the side, and then either clip or pin them together. And we will sew these with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a regular straight stitch, and repeat for both sets. I'm stitching these seams using a straight stitch at a regular length and a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you'll want to backstitch at the beginning and end. We have these 2 sets sewn, and now we want to sew them together. And you want to make sure you're going every other, so the side, center, side, center. So just turn it right sides together, match that notch, and then pin or clip the raw edges. And again, we'll just stitch straight down. All right, now I'm ready to press and trim the seam allowances. So you want to press the seam allowances going away from the center body and pocket area. So on the back, this section will lay really flat. And then I like to trim just one of the seam allowances, and I trim this bottom one. And you can trim it just about halfway back. So just take your scissors, and this will reduce some bulk. We're going to be top stitching our handles over the top of these seams. So you want to reduce that a little bit, and just do it on both sides. And then you can iron it. If you're having problems getting your seams to lie flat, you can use a clapper after you press. We also need to stitch together our lining in the round. So this is the lining for the small size, and I'm going to fold it with right sides together and align this raw edge for the one side seam. Just pin this together using your pins or clips. And if you're making the regular size, it looks more like this, and you will fold this in half. Again, right sides together, and pin or clip this edge together. For this seam, I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch. And you want to make sure to backstitch at the beginning and end. And then you'll want to press this seam open. For the regular size, I like to fold and stitch the center of the handles. After stitching, it will look like this, and it's a little bit firmer of a handle, and this step is totally optional. So you want to start by folding this cut piece for the handle in half and then mark the center point. Then we can unfold it. I want to mark 4 inches on either side. And then you can fold it in half. And I like to use clips for this because it's often a little challenging to get pins through your webbing. So here I have my strap ready to stitch, and I'm going to start at the folded edge and then go to these 2 outer edges and pivot. You may want to engage this self-leveling foot so that it's more steady or level as you sew. So when you get close to that edge, just lift your presser foot and pivot. And then we're going to stitch all the way down to the other marking. Again, I'm going to engage the self-leveling foot, and then you can remove your markings and repeat for the other side. Now we're ready to stitch the handles onto the bag. And just as a reminder, we have only stitched 3 of the seams for the body. So the reason that we have only stitched 3 seams and we've not joined it in the round yet is because it'll be easier to attach these handles while it's flat. So we're going to top stitch the handles on 3 pieces, then stitch it in the round and stitch the final one. And it's just going to be a lot easier for this early part, but it does kind of separate the steps out a little bit. So it might feel a little more tedious, but you will appreciate it while sewing the handles. So you need to have your cotton webbing. I am doing the small size, and this is 1 inch wide. You can use any sort of webbing that you like. And then you'll probably want to have some clips, a ruler, and definitely some adhesive fabric tape. And it also really helps if you find a repositionable fabric tape, meaning that you can stick down your handle, lift it up, and move it. If you're making the regular size tote and you folded over your handle and stitched it, you want to choose one side to be the right side and one to be the wrong. So here I have chosen this folded side to be the right side, and you'll just want to be extra careful when positioning your handles that you do it the same on each side. And as always, be careful not to twist it when you set this up. In the instruction booklet, there are guidelines for the position or kind of suggestions for the measurements on the position of the handles. So definitely you want to try to get the handle centered over this seam. So I've marked the center of my webbing here on both of these. And then I also recommend not top stitching all the way to the top. It's nice to have a little bit of a give up here. Let's start by putting some adhesive tape onto the handle. And I like to do a strip on each side. And I am going to leave a gap at the top of 1 3/4 inches. And this tape is sticky on one side and then has paper on the other. So I will just stick it down and then remove the paper, and I can put it onto my fabric. So I need about 7.5 inches of my fabric tape, and I do a strip on each side of the handle. I really like to use the tape for these handles because it's just too hard to get pins or clips through these layers in the middle of the fabric. And then we can do the same thing for this side. Okay, now we want to remove the paper from the tape. I usually use a pin to loosen it, and then that tape is there and it's clear. So I will do both of these, and then you flip it over and position it centered over that seam. And you can use a ruler to double check that it's straight. You want to look at the wrong side, and you can lift it up and move it if it's not straight. So you'll do that to both sides. And then when you have it positioned where you want it, you can use your iron to help that glue stick better. So I also like to stitch a little triangle at the top, and I will use my ruler and a wash away pen to mark that. So I'm going to start by marking the top of the stitching. And then I want my triangle at the top to be about 1/2 inch deep. So I just have a little dot for the middle, and then I eyeball it, and I will use this triangle as a guideline for my top stitching. I use matching thread to top stitch these, so I don't worry about being too exact. This just gives you a little extra security that these handles are really going to stay in place. So you want to do the same thing for this side, and then we can go top stitch. I'm now ready to top stitch my handles to the tote. So I like to use a thread that matches my webbing, and I'm using a straight stitch. Let's see, I've added a few clips to the handles just to give it a little extra hold in case the tape doesn't work. I am stitching with a straight stitch at a 2.8 length, and I've moved the needle over to the right. So I try to stitch really close to the edge, but because my thread matches and this webbing is really textured, I don't worry too much about it being straight because the stitching is not that visible. So you want to stitch all the way to that top edge of the triangle that we drew a straight line for. Then lift your presser foot and pivot. Drop your presser foot back down and stitch straight across to the other side of the webbing. If you're not sewing the triangle, you can pivot and stitch down the other side. But if you are sewing the triangle, you want to lift your presser foot and pivot towards that middle of the triangle. So stitch to the middle of the triangle and pivot again. Pivot another time, and we're going to stitch back over the top of that top end of the stitching. Our final pivot, we're going to pivot 90 degrees and stitch down the other side of the webbing. Okay, that's all done, and you can remove the markings for the triangle and repeat for the other two handles. We have 3 of our handles stitched to the body, and now we need to sew this into a round. So we just fold it with right sides together and align this raw edge of the remaining center body and side body, and make sure to match that notch and pin or clip it together. And then you're just going to stitch straight down this side and trim and press the seam allowance just like you did for the other seams. Now we're ready to stitch this final handle. I prepared this the same way as the others. And the only tricky part now is that we have this in the round, so it's a little harder to access this area for stitching. So if possible, I recommend removing the bed and just having your free arm here to give yourself a little more room. So we'll stitch it the same way. It'll just be a little trickier. So you might want to take it more slowly. So that's it for day 4 in this part of the sew along. We have our bodies all assembled, and in the next segment we'll be attaching them to the bottom pieces and then attaching the lining to the exterior. Well, I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to let me know down in the comments. And if you haven't yet, I would be so honored if you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Next week, we're going to be finishing up our totes, and then I have a few hacks and variations that I'm also planning to share. And if you don't have your pattern yet, it's available in my shop, and there's a link in the show notes. Thanks again for watching. Happy sewing!